Welcome to my podcast where we discuss various topics related to Quebec and Canadian real estate. In each episode, I unpack a different topic to help you be more informed. In today's episode, we're continuing our series, our 8-step process to successfully purchase your next home. So today's episode number 6, we're going to talk about how to make an offer, which is step number 5 of 8. So if you followed the previous episode, we talked about property hunting. And then, so this is continuing on the series. So 4 elements that we're going to touch on in today's episode. So number 1, I'm going to give a high-level overview of the end-to-end flow. So what to expect if you've never made an offer before. Then we're going to talk about the actual offer itself, the document. I will give a high-level view of the document. I'm just going to talk about it in today's episode. In a future episode, I'll probably do a demo and walk you guys through the document itself. So I'll put it on the screen and walk you through each step, so just so you have an understanding. Number 3, we're going to talk about the condition that you might want to consider when you're making an offer. And then number 4, we're going to talk about smart offer and what that means. Okay, so let's get started. So the end-to-end flow. So typically, again, this is specific to my market, but I'm assuming it's applicable to anywhere in Canada and in the States and even parts of Europe. The flow, the end-to-end, I guess, process, if you want, of making an offer usually starts with you're drafting the offer. And again, so if you're working with a realtor, they're going to help you draft the offer. And in that offer, there's going to be, we're going to talk about it later, but there's going to be several elements. One of those elements are the delay. So how long is your offer valid for? Typically, that's a minimum of 24 hours up to a few days, depending on the circumstances. Again, your realtor will guide you through that. Then once you've drafted your offer, it's going to get presented or sent to the seller. And the seller is going to have 3 options here, okay? So number 1, they can accept your offer, which is what we're hoping for. Secondly, they can refuse your offer. And there's 2 ways they're going to be able to refuse. Either they're going to reply to your offer and saying they refused, or they're just going to ignore it completely. And once the delay that you had, so let's just say your offer was good for 24 hours. After that 24 hours, the offer is no longer valid. So they may, don't be surprised if they don't respond to the offer. And we've seen that a lot in the last 3 years where with all the overbidding and multiple offers, sometimes some sellers were getting like 20, 25 offers. So obviously they may not respond to all of them. But that's not to say you cannot have any insight on why. So you're typically, if you're working with a realtor or the sellers are working with a realtor, you can kind of ask for feedback. And if it's between the buyer and the seller and there's no broker in between, you can ask the seller why they haven't responded to your offer. And then the third way the seller can respond is by making a counter offer. And the counter offer typically will be on either the price or on some of the condition. Okay, so that's typically the end-to-end flow for making an offer. Now let's talk about the offer itself. So here in Quebec, we call the document promise to purchase. It is a legal binding document. Okay, so this is very important, and we'll let me unpack that a bit. Okay, once your offer is accepted, that does not make you the owner. Okay, that's only done when you go sign the deed of sale. However, it is a legally binding document, which means that once the seller accepts your offer, you are obligated to purchase the property, unless some of your conditions are not met, right? But you have to have a valid reason not to proceed with the deed of sale, which means that the seller can force the sale onto you in the event that you don't have a valid reason for not buying the property. Okay, so it is a very serious document. So you really need to be careful before you draft one and present it to the seller. Okay, so it is a legally binding document, especially here in Quebec. So it's very important that you take that seriously. So that's number one that's worth mentioning. If you're working with a realtor, they're gonna have a government sanctioned document that they use. So here in Quebec, the real estate brokering industry is regulated by a governmental body called the OASIC, so Organisme d'autoréglementation du courtage immobilier du Québec. I know it's a mouthful. Sorry, I don't know what the English version is. But basically, that government body regulates all the rules that apply to realtor and the brokering industry, specifically for real estate. So they also, that's the governing body that dictates what document to use, when to use them, and so forth. So realtor have a set of documents that they need to use. And when it comes to promise to purchase, they have various versions depending on what you're buying. So if you're buying a condo, there's going to be one version. If you're buying a single family home, there's going to be another version. And these documents are pretty complete, and they're made in such a way to protect the buyer and the seller, right? So just keep that in mind. And typically those documents nowadays are filled up electronically. So your realtor is going to walk you through it. They're going to send you it's like a DocuSign. You sign it up, and then it gets sent directly to the seller, okay? Like I said, once the offer is accepted, it doesn't mean you're not the owner yet. That's only done at the deed of sale. And when you're making the offer, we're going to go through the section here, but you're going to talk about in the offer, you're going to write down when do you want to sign at the notary, the deed of sale, and when do you want to take possession of the property. So those are all things that are negotiated in the offer. So let's talk about the various sections that you're going to find in that offer. So number one, there's going to be a section on information of the buyer yourself. So if you're buying alone or with somebody else, it's going to list all the buyers. Then you're going to have a section where it's going to list the information about the property that you're looking to buy. There's going to be the offer price section and the financing. So how are you financing the property? Are you paying all cash? Are you taking on a mortgage? If it is, how much down payment are you doing? What are you financing? And usually they'll add the ongoing rate at the time of when you're making the offer. Then there's going to be a section for all the conditions that you're going to want. Then there's a section for the inclusion. So if, for example, you want furniture, appliances to be part of the offer, that's in that section. You're gonna write whatever you want included. So if there's a boat and you want the boat to be included, that's the section. There's a section in there that you're gonna be able to write that. Then, like I said previously, the date of the notary when you're gonna sign the deed of sale. So it could be like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 45 days after the acceptance of the purchase offer. And then when you want to take possession. So that's important to note that even though when you sign the deed of sale, you become the owner, the seller may want to stay for a bit longer in the property. And if that's the case, there's, your realtor is going to be able to guide you through it, but you might want to add some language around them potentially paying you for rent for like a month. So if there's a 30 days or let's just say there's 2 months between you signing the deed of sale and you taking possession, then you might want to negotiate like a 2-month rent in there. So those are things that you want to consider. And then lastly, your signature and the signature of the other people that are going to be buying. Okay? So that is the high-level section that you're going to find in the promise to purchase. Now, in some other provinces, the document might be different, but here in Quebec, like I said, if you're working with a realtor, there's going to be official document from the OASIC that your realtor is going to have to use, and they're going to guide you through the process. So let's move on now to the conditions, okay? So this is the condition that you're going to want to put in there is dependent on your situation, the property that you're buying, and so forth, so on. So there's a lot of things to factor in to determine what condition you want to put in. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about here is the typical conditions that you will see. Okay, I'm not going to list every single condition because there could be a lot. So I'm just going to mention what probably you're going to find 80% of the time. Okay, so number one is the inspection. So when you're making your offer, if you want to have the property inspected, you're going to put that as a condition. And typically when you put some of these conditions in, there's a delay after. So let's just say you're putting in a condition for inspection. You have a certain number of days to have the property inspected after the offer gets accepted. So let's just say you make your offer today. It gets accepted tomorrow, and in the inspection condition, you said that you will have the property inspected 10 days following the acceptance of your offer. That means you have 10 days to find an inspector, schedule the appointment, and them having coming in, inspecting the property, and then providing you a report on it. All that needs to be done within 10 days. So it's important that you have kind of an idea on who's going to be the inspector and that they're available for that period of time. Okay, so something very important to consider. Then you have the financing. Okay, so if you guys remember in step number 3 of 8, we talked about the pre-approval. Okay, and the same logic that we just talked about with the inspection where you have delays, typically you have financing delay that you need to write in your offer. Example, the buyer will have a acceptance from the bank within 10-15 days of this offer being accepted. So that means you have X amount of days to show proof that the bank has officially approved you for the mortgage to buy the property. Okay, so if you followed step number 3 and you did your pre-approval, then you're going to need way less delays to finalize your mortgage because you would have provided all the relevant document to your mortgage broker or mortgage specialist for them to start that process. So all it will take at this point, if you've done the pre-approval, is you let them know that you're making an offer. You send them, or your realtor is going to send them the listing of the offer that you're, of the property that you're going to be making an offer, and they're going to take care of the rest and come back to you with an official response. So that should drastically reduce the number of days for you to get that official approval. Okay. The other condition that you might have in there is to review certain important documents. So again, if you're, for example, buying a condo, you want to review the financial statement of that property, of the whole condo building. You might want to review the bylaws and all the stuff that's in there. So again, it depends on the property that you're buying. If you're buying, I don't know, a cottage, you might want to have document that certifies the septic tank and a bunch of other documents, right? But that's a condition that we often see. If in the seller's declaration there was some issues that were mentioned by the seller, and you might want some of these issues to be fixed by the seller, that might be a condition that you want to put in. If you're buying a duplex, triplex, or fourplex, because we are talking about residential here, so that in Quebec, that's considered like under 5 unit is considered residential. Above that, it's multifamily, commercial. But if you're buying that type of property and you weren't able to visit the rented unit because you needed an accepted offer to be able to do so, then you want to put that offer, obviously. And going back to some of the documents that you want to review, if you're buying an income property, you want to see the leases and all the relevant document there as well. So you want to put that in your condition. And then the other condition that you might want to have in there, certain tests. So example, if you're buying a cottage, the bank is going to probably need a water test. If you're buying in an area where there's known to be pyrite, you might want to do a test there, but that's optional again. Okay. So these are some of the condition that you'll typically see in your offer. It's not the total list, but I just wanted to at least touch on what 80% of the time you might find. Then we're going to conclude by talking about smart offer. Okay, so what is a smart offer? So first off, when you're making your offer, you want to get a list of comps of the property that you're looking to make an offer. Okay, and if you're working with a realtor, they're going to be able to easily get you that information. If you're not working with a realtor, it's going to be more complicated, not impossible, but it depends. So in my region, there's ways to go about it. I can talk about that in a future episode. But if you are working with a realtor, it's much simpler. They have access to their system. They can pull you a bunch of comp. And obviously that's going to help you dictate the offer that you're going to make. And also make sure that those comps are fairly recent, right? Because sometimes the market can shift. And we've seen this drastically with here in Quebec and Canada with the sudden increase in the interest rate. Obviously, that had effect of less buyers being able to qualify for a mortgage. So that slowed down the real estate market, right? And some of the price of the homes were impacted. So again, you want to pull some of the recent comp to help you determine what is the best price for your offer. The second thing you want to consider is the market condition. And you've heard me talk about that in previous episode, right? Are you in a seller or are you in a buyer's market? Okay. And a seller's market is where there is way more buyers than sellers. So seller have a advantage, right? So they can put their house on sale and then there's a bunch of buyers for it, right? If you're in a buyer's market, that means there's way more seller than there is buyers. So typically buyers will have the edge at that point and they'll have more negotiation power, okay? So you need to understand that. So if you're in a seller's market, right, and there's multi bids on each property like we had during the pandemic, well, you want to be more conservative in how you do your offer, okay? You might not want to put 50 conditions in it. You might not want to make a offer under 50K under asking price, right? So these are things that you want to consider. So knowing the market that you're in is very important. And you could be like, even in Quebec where I live, some region may have different markets. So if you're the greater Montreal area may have a different market than, for example, the Tremblant area, right? You really have to hone in on exactly the market where you're making an offer. The second thing you want to consider when you're making an offer is how long has the property been on the market? So if it just came up on the market, then the likelihood of you being able to negotiate on the price, for example, is going to be much lower. The longer the property has been on the market, the more chances you have to be able to negotiate, right? Because typically the longer the property is on the market, the sellers typically starts to be impatient, right? Reality start to sink in. So you might have more leeway to be able to negotiate. But if the property just came on the market, the likelihood of you being able to negotiate is very low. Doesn't mean you can't. Has there been any offer on the property? Has there been a lot of visits? So these are things that you want to ask directly or indirectly the seller if you're able, or you want to have your broker ask these questions to the other broker, okay? We talked about previously about the condition. So obviously if you're in a seller's market, the property just came on the market, you might want to rethink putting, like I said, like 20 conditions, right? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't put any condition, but you want to be smart about how many conditions you're putting in there. Typically, the more conditions there are, the less the seller is going to have the appetite to accept it, especially if there's 3 other offers and the other offers have 1 or 2 condition or none. It's going to be much more difficult, right? The same thing with the financing. When you're in a seller's market and there's a lot of multi-offer, Typically, people that have larger down payment, and especially if they got pre-approved, there's more likely for their offer to be accepted. Okay, and that leads me to the last part. Sorry, always make sure that you have a pre-approval attached to your offer. Always, always, always. Like I said, especially in the market that we're in currently, in the seller's market, when you're making that offer, if it's not pre-approved, the likelihood of it being accepted is very low, especially with the interest rate that we have. So that concludes today's episode. Thank you for watching. In our next episode, we're going to talk about step 6 of 8, which is closing on the condition. So we're going to talk a bit more about those conditions and kind of what to expect during that step after the offer being accepted, and you have to respect those whatever delays you've put in your offer. See you in the next episode. Thank you.